Joining us to discuss what this means is Karis Witte, founder and executive director at the Signal Group. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Karis. So Iran and Russia have become increasingly close recently, and both have rather good relations with China. What can we expect to come out of a meeting like this, just to start off?
I'm not sure that the outcome a bottom line outcome is necessarily what everyone, those three partners are looking for. It's very interesting to think about China's diplomatic efforts in the region. This looks to me like a renewal of its aim to be a diplomatic leader. It tried when it did facilitated the deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. It received great accolades and thought it could forge ahead on diplomacy and solving the problems of the Middle East. During the war that we've seen since October 7th, China tried to bring together the 14 factions of the Palestinian groups, and that did not go very far, lead to very much. And then with Israel's strategic wins in the region, which very much rewrote the narrative for Syria, Lebanon, and what's happening in Israel, China started to take a step back from the diplomacy and political efforts and revert to its default of economic and technological efforts in the region. Now, probably through Trump's relationship with Russia, all of those negotiations, Russia steps in and said, let's, talk. And then China brings the three together. China has been very hesitant to be in public with Moscow and Tehran. It doesn't like the label of that tripartite axis. So for China to be doing this on a public level means it sees the potential for it to be at least perceived as a leader in diplomatic efforts that no one else, aka the United States, can do. What can actually come out of it, I think, is much less than the perceived success of China and diplomacy.
Interesting. So it's less about the outcome of the meeting and more about the fact that the meeting itself is being held. The announcement of this meeting comes a day after the Iranian president said that Iran will not negotiate with Trump, calling him a bully. Are these countries essentially sending a message to the West, even though you're saying that China is a little bit hesitant to be part of this image of the three together? Are they sending a message?
I mean, it depends on where you're sitting. The message is not going to be received unless there's a real outcome. And I come back to the issue of the factions that met together. They signed the Beijing Declaration, but literally nothing changed. So unlike with the Saudi-Iran deal, where Saudi Arabia and Iran were already ready to cooperate, here we're talking about Iran talking to Beijing and Moscow about stepping back in its nuclear program. Will it really step back? Will this be the pressure that is necessary? We know that China does not want Iran to have nuclear military capability. That is a definite, and they have been speaking quietly behind the scenes to Iran for many years to slow it down, not let it happen. China has a lot of economic leverage, and it can push buttons. It likes to do it behind the scenes. What will come on a public level out of this? It's very hard to say. It's hard to believe that Iran is going to take any official step backwards.
Right. So I want to dive into what you said about how China does not want Iran to produce nuclear weapons. That said, though, how intent is it on stopping Tehran? And opposite, how ready is it, if at all, to defend Iran if that becomes necessary?
It's not going to defend Iran. China is not going to step in militarily for anybody. China does not want to take serious kinetic efforts on any subject. The only thing that I think most China experts agree on is that it would be around Taiwan and the first island chain. This is far away from that, and definitely would not see China stepping in on a military level. However, China will put a great deal of pressure and use the many tools that it has to prevent Iran from gaining a nuclear weapon out of concern that there could be a conflagration in the region, because Saudi Arabia is completely against Iran getting nuclear military capability. Saudi Arabia is a very important partner for China and a growing partner for China, because it and the UAE are some of the only serious sovereign wealth funds left that are willing to put a major investment into China. That could change. China is trying to reshape its image when it comes to the private sector. But for now, China sees Saudi Arabia as a very important economic link. So allowing Iran to get nuclear capability would threaten Saudi Arabia and certainly would threaten Israel. Everyone's very aware of Israel's military capabilities and the U.S. backing. So I'm sure that China is going to do everything it can to prevent Iran from getting that nuclear bomb that would possibly create a situation where if things go up in flames, China loses enough energy to cause a crash in its own economy.
All right, Carice Witte, thank you so much for your analysis, your input this evening. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.